Rain tapped against the glass wall of Aaron Blake's penthouse as the city pulsed below, alive, restless, and utterly indifferent. He stood alone, staring at his reflection, seeing the face the world admired but he no longer recognized. "I'm not sure that's my child," he had said 3 years ago, words that now echoed like a curse he could never take back. Back then he had power, fame, control, everything except courage. He built empires out of logic, measured life in profits, and silenced every emotion that dared to challenge his perfect order. Yet all it took was one woman to shatter it, Sophia. She had been light in a room he thought didn't need it, warmth in a world he believed didn't deserve it. He pushed her away because love didn't fit into his calculations. But tonight, as thunder rolled across the skyline, he wondered if losing her had been the greatest failure of his life. He told himself she had moved on, that the child wasn't his, that time would bury regret. But time had only made it louder. Somewhere out there were questions he couldn't silence. And perhaps faces he wasn't ready to see. 3 years earlier, the night he uttered those words, Sophia had stood in front of him in his glass-walled office, trembling but brave, hopeful but already breaking. Her soft voice had carried strength when she told him she was expecting. Aaron had stared at her as if she'd spoken another language. He couldn't process it. A child, responsibility, love. To a man who controlled everything, uncertainty was the one thing he couldn't bear. Instead of joy, fear had filled his chest. The fear of chaos, of headlines, of losing control. So he hid behind logic and suspicion. "I'm not sure that's my child," he'd said coldly, not realizing those words would burn through the rest of his life. Sophia's tears never fell in front of him. She simply nodded and left, taking with her the only softness that had ever touched his world. After that night, her laughter vanished from his memory, replaced by the echo of silence that filled his penthouse. He tried drowning it with meetings, deals, and expensive noise. But even in success, her absence screamed louder. And though he convinced himself he'd done the right thing, deep down, a quiet part of him whispered the truth he refused to face. He had just lost something money could never buy back. Sophia's life changed the moment she closed the door behind her that night. She left the city without looking back, carrying not anger but quiet strength. Months later, in a small seaside town, her cries of pain turned into the soft sound of 2 newborns taking their first breaths. Twin girls, Emma and Bella, with dark curls and piercing blue eyes that reminded her of the man she once loved. She held them close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Days turned into years filled with struggle and sacrifice. She worked at a small cafe by the harbor, serving strangers with a smile that hid sleepless nights. Every time the twins laughed, she felt both joy and ache. They were the best parts of a story that ended too soon. Sometimes when they asked about their father, she'd smile faintly and say, "He lives far away." But when the girls slept, she would sit by the window, watching the ocean shimmer under the moonlight, wondering if he ever thought of them. Despite her pain, she taught her daughters love, kindness, and strength, everything she once wished Aaron had understood. In that small town, her heartbreak became her reason to survive. Back in the city, Aaron's empire stood taller than ever, yet he had never felt smaller within it. Every deal he closed, every headline that praised his brilliance, felt meaningless. He had learned to live in silence, surrounded by people who admired his power but never truly knew him. Late at night, when the city lights blurred beyond his window, he often thought about Sophia. He imagined her somewhere peaceful, perhaps with someone who deserved her more. But he couldn't silence the guilt that followed him like a shadow. One evening, while attending a charity event, a little girl ran past him laughing, her blue eyes so familiar that his heart stopped. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He searched the crowd, but she was gone. That night, something inside him shifted. The face of that child refused to leave his mind. Could it be? No, he told himself, it was impossible. Yet the thought refused to die. Weeks later, during another event, he heard someone mention a cafe by the coast that supported single mothers. The name of the founder hit him like lightning. Sophia Reed. For the first time in 3 years, Aaron felt something real again, hope mixed with fear, and the pull of a truth he could no longer ignore. The next morning, Aaron couldn't shake her name from his mind. He searched for the cafe online, scrolling through dozens of photos until one made his heart stop. Sophia, standing behind a counter, smiling faintly with 2 little girls beside her. The twins had her dark curls and his blue eyes. His hands trembled as he zoomed in, disbelief turning into a painful rush of realization. They were his. Every piece of denial he had built came crashing down. That night sleep didn't come. Memories replayed, her trembling voice, his cruel words, the silence that followed. By sunrise, he made his decision. He drove for hours until the towering city melted into coastal roads. When he finally arrived, the sound of waves filled the air. Through the cafe window, he saw Sophia wiping a table while the 2 girls chased each other laughing. His throat tightened. He wanted to run to them, to fall on his knees and beg forgiveness. But fear held him still. What if she turned away? What if she refused to let him near them? Then one of the girls looked up, meeting his gaze through the glass. For a brief second, her eyes, his eyes, locked onto his, and something inside him broke completely. Sophia froze when she saw him step into the cafe. For a heartbeat, the sound of the ocean outside was louder than her breath. Aaron stood there, uncertain and smaller than she remembered, holding a single white flower in his trembling hand. The twins hid behind her apron, peeking out with curious eyes. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Sophia, I was wrong," he said quietly, his eyes wet with years of unspoken regret. She didn't reply, just watched him, waiting for the words he never said 3 years ago. "They're mine, aren't they?" he whispered, glancing at the girls who now clung to her hand. Sophia's lips trembled as she nodded. "You knew," she said softly, "but you chose to doubt love." For the first time in his life, Aaron had nothing to defend, nothing to prove. He knelt before the girls, tears spilling freely. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "I missed everything that mattered." Emma tilted her head. "Are you our dad?" she asked innocently. Aaron's chest tightened as he nodded, and both girls smiled shyly before wrapping their arms around him. Sophia turned away, wiping her tears. Outside, the sea shimmered under golden light, a quiet witness to forgiveness. For the first time, Aaron Blake felt peace. Not the kind earned by wealth or victory, but the kind that comes only when you finally choose love over pride.